Welcome to our Explainer. Today we're digging into a truly bizarre piece of legal history, a story that connects the quiet forests of colonial New England directly to the U.S. Constitution.
So let's just dive right in with a question that sounds, well, it sounds totally made up. Could a tree be arrested and put on trial the same way you'd prosecute a pirate ship on the high seas?
As strange as it sounds, this wasn't just some philosophical question. In colonial America, the answer was, believe it or not, yes.
Okay, so picture this. A logger chops down a massive white pine. But instead of the logger getting a fine, the log itself is seized. Legally, it was treated as contraband, prosecuted as if it were smuggled goods found on a ship. So how on earth was that possible? Well, it was thanks to a legal tool called proceedings in rem. Now, this is a lawsuit against a thing, an item of property, not a person. The court wasn't putting the logger on trial. It was literally putting the log on trial. The wood itself was the defendant.
And this is where the language gets really wild. A felled mast tree could be libeled in Admiralty. That's a term straight out of maritime law for seizing ships. And here it was, being applied to a tree deep in a forest. So, you have to be asking, why all this legal fuss over a tree? Because, to the British Crown, these weren't just any old trees. No, they were an absolutely critical strategic resource.
You see, the eastern white pines of New England were one of a kind. They grew incredibly tall, incredibly straight, they were naturally rot-resistant, and they were perfect, absolutely perfect, for the massive masts required by the warships of the Royal Navy, which was, the most powerful military force on the planet at the time.
So, to protect this vital supply chain, Parliament passed a whole series of laws called the White Pine Acts. And over a few decades, you can see how these acts steadily tightened the Crown's grip, reserving all the best trees for the king and making it illegal for colonists to touch them.
And this is where it gets really clever, or, depending on your point of view, really outrageous. The Crown wasn't inventing new laws. They were just mapping the law of the sea directly onto the land. The king's woods were treated like territorial waters, and an illegal log was treated just like a seized ship carrying contraband.
The thinking basically went like this. Each one of these giant pines was already a ship in embryo. It was destined for naval service from the moment it was a seedling, so it fell under naval law, Admiralty Law, from the very beginning.
Now, as you can probably guess, the colonists, who saw these trees as part of their land and their livelihood, were, let's just say, not thrilled with this whole arrangement.
And their grievances ran deep. First off, these cases were tried in special courts with no jury. That denied colonists what they saw as a fundamental right of every Englishman. On top of that, the burden of proof was often flipped, and they just felt like the Crown was stealing their private property.
And if that whole no jury trial thing is ringing a bell, it absolutely should. Because the outrage over these Admiralty courts, which became a famous rallying cry during the Stamp Act crisis, it didn't start with taxes on paper. It started decades earlier with fights over trees. So, in a very real way, the American fight against what they saw as British tyranny began right here. The first sparks of the Revolution were kindled not just in bustling port cities, but deep in the quiet woods of New England. But wait, the story doesn't end there with the Revolution. This strange legal idea actually survived, and it evolved into a powerful legal doctrine that shapes the United States to this day. Okay, so let's trace how this idea traveled through time. The British created this thing called an imperial servitude, basically the idea that private land had to serve the public's need for navigation. Well, after the Revolution, American law took that exact blueprint and just plugged it into the Commerce Clause of the brand new Constitution. And this evolved into what we now call navigational servitude. It's a cornerstone of U.S. law, and in plain English, it means the federal government's power to regulate commerce on rivers and lakes can override the property rights of the people who own land along those waters. Just look at this. It's practically a mirror image. For Britain, the asset was timber, and the reason was the Royal Navy. For the United States, the asset is waterways, and the reason is commerce. But that core principle at the bottom? It is identical. Private property has to give way to the public's right of navigation.
It's really a stunning example of how the legal DNA from a forgotten colonial fight over trees made its way into the very heart of American law. It just goes to show you the past is never really past, which leaves us with one final thought. What other ghosts of old laws are still out there,
hiding in plain sight and shaping the world we live in today.